My beloved child, do not move past this moment too quickly. Something has been stirring beneath the surface, something you were never meant to discover through noise, gossip, or coincidence. Pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear carries the weight of a truth that has been hidden behind silence for longer than you realize. There is a reason these words found you now. There is a reason your heart has been restless, why certain memories have returned without warning, why a name can suddenly cross your mind when you were thinking about something completely different. You may have believed nothing was happening because no message arrived, no confession appeared, no door visibly opened. But there are moments when the greatest changes happen where the eyes cannot see them. And this is one of those moments. Your soulmate has spoken about you. Not casually. Not as though you were simply another person from their past. They shared something they had kept guarded, something they had tried to carry alone, and the moment those words left their mouth, the atmosphere around them changed. Someone heard a truth about you that your soulmate had never been brave enough to say aloud before. Stay with this message, because what they revealed was only the beginning. For a long time, your soulmate has been living between two versions of themselves. There is the version everyone sees, the one that smiles when expected, answers questions carefully, and pretends certain subjects no longer affect them. Then there is the quieter version, the one that emerges when the room becomes still, when the phone is placed face down, when everyone else has gone home and there is nothing left to distract the heart. That version remembers you differently. That version does not reduce you to a chapter that ended. That version has carried conversations with you that never happened out loud. They have imagined what they would say if you stood before them without anger, without defenses, without old misunderstandings standing between you. They have asked themselves questions they would never admit publicly. Did I misread what we had? Did I protect myself so much that I pushed away something real? Did they ever know what they meant to me? And the most difficult question of all has followed them like a shadow. What if the person I tried hardest to forget was the person my heart never truly released? You may not have known any of this because they became very skilled at appearing untouched. Perhaps there were moments when you wondered whether you had imagined the depth of the connection. Perhaps their silence made you question your own memories. You may have replayed small details and wondered whether they ever noticed the same things you did. The tone in a conversation. The strange comfort of simply being near each other. The way certain moments seemed ordinary at the time but refused to become ordinary in your memory. Listen carefully, because the secret they shared was connected to exactly that. Your soulmate admitted that what happened between you affected them far more deeply than anyone around them understood. They had allowed people to believe one story because that story was easier to explain. It was easier to say they had moved on. Easier to act as though timing had simply been wrong. Easier to blame circumstances, distance, confusion, or incompatible paths. But recently, someone close to them asked a question that slipped beneath all of those comfortable explanations. It happened during a conversation that was not supposed to become serious. The beginning was ordinary. There may have been laughter, a casual remark, perhaps even another subject entirely. But your name or something connected to you appeared unexpectedly, and the energy changed. Your soulmate tried to brush past it at first. They gave the kind of answer people give when they do not want anyone looking too deeply. But the person with them noticed. They noticed the hesitation. They noticed the way your soulmate became quieter for a second too long. They noticed that the eyes said something the words were trying to hide. And then came the question your soulmate had been avoiding even in their own mind: if that person meant so little, why does their name still change you? My child, that question opened a door. Your soulmate did not answer immediately. They looked away. Their first instinct was to escape the conversation, to laugh, to change the subject, perhaps to say it was complicated. But something inside them was tired of carrying the truth in fragments. There are secrets that remain hidden because someone wants to deceive, and there are secrets that remain hidden because someone does not yet have the courage to understand their own heart. This was the second kind. They had spent so much time controlling the story that even they had begun believing parts of it. But suddenly, with someone waiting quietly for an honest answer, the walls weakened. They admitted that you were not simply someone they once cared about. They admitted that something about you had stayed with them through changes, through new routines, through attempts to begin again. They admitted that there were nights when they almost reached out and mornings when they convinced themselves not to. They admitted that they had compared moments, conversations, and emotional connections to what they once felt with you. But do not skip what comes next, because that was still not the real secret. The person listening asked them why they had never told you. And that question touched the deepest wound. Your soulmate said something they had not expected to say. They confessed that they were afraid you had already seen the worst version of them and decided it was all they could ever be. Think about that. While you may have wondered whether you were enough for them, they were carrying the fear that they had already proven themselves unworthy of you. While you may have interpreted their distance as indifference, part of that distance grew from shame. They knew there were moments when they could have been clearer. They knew they could have handled certain situations differently. They knew they left questions where reassurance should have been. And the longer the silence lasted, the harder it became to imagine returning without having to face everything they had avoided. This is why your story has felt unfinished in ways you could not explain. An unfinished connection does not always mean two people must return to one another. Sometimes it means there are truths that were never spoken, lessons that were never fully understood, or feelings that were hidden beneath pride and fear. But something unusual has been happening around your soulmate lately. Their old explanations are no longer comforting them. What once allowed them to sleep peacefully now feels incomplete. The story they told themselves about why things happened is beginning to crack, because their heart keeps presenting evidence their mind cannot easily dismiss. They remember the way you noticed things other people overlooked. They remember how you could sense when something was wrong even when they insisted everything was fine. They remember the parts of themselves that felt less guarded around you. And then they remember how it ended, faded, became complicated, or fell into silence, and something inside them whispers, that cannot be the whole story. You need to understand another layer. The secret was not simply that they still thought about you. It was not even that feelings remained. What they revealed was something much more personal. They admitted that after your connection changed, they carried something you once said to them. It may have been a sentence you barely remember. It may have been encouragement, a warning, a promise, or an observation about who they were beneath their defenses. You spoke it naturally, perhaps never realizing it would stay with them. But it did. In difficult moments, those words came back. When they doubted themselves, they remembered how you saw them. When they felt misunderstood, they remembered that there had once been someone who seemed to recognize what was hidden beneath the surface. They told this person that your words had followed them through seasons of their life. And the listener asked, "Does this person know that?" Your soulmate said no. That single answer revealed more than any dramatic confession could have. Imagine carrying evidence that you mattered to someone while believing you had been forgotten. Imagine two people walking away with completely different interpretations of the same connection. You saw silence and may have translated it as absence. They experienced silence and used it as a shield. You may have believed they stopped caring. They may have believed caring gave them too much to lose. This is not an excuse for anything that hurt you. Heaven does not ask you to pretend confusion was kindness or that silence did not have consequences. But understanding is different from excusing. Sometimes the truth does not erase the past, it simply allows you to see it from a higher place. Something else happened during that conversation. After your soulmate admitted how deeply your words had remained with them, the person listening challenged them. They said, in essence, "Then why are you acting as if this means nothing?" That question struck harder than your soulmate expected. They began defending themselves. They said too much time had passed. They said you might not want to hear from them. They said life had changed. They listed every reason the door should remain closed. Yet with every reason, the person listening heard fear rather than certainty. Finally, they asked the question your soulmate could not answer: are you protecting peace, or are you protecting yourself from rejection? The silence that followed was different. There are silences that end conversations, and there are silences in which truth enters the room. Your soulmate realized they did not know. Stay until the end of this part, because the next thing they admitted shifts everything. They said that there had been several moments recently when they felt almost pushed toward remembering you. Not in a frightening way, not as some demand they could not escape, but through strange emotional coincidences. A familiar song. A place that reminded them of something you once talked about. Someone using a phrase you used to say. A dream they could not fully remember upon waking, except for the feeling that you were somehow connected to it. Your soulmate had dismissed each moment separately. But together, they were becoming harder to ignore. They told the person listening that it felt as if life kept returning them to a question they had refused to answer. What if I was wrong about what this connection meant? My child, this is where the story becomes deeper. Because your soulmate has not only been remembering you. They have been reviewing themselves. The person they were when they knew you is not exactly the person they are now. Time has confronted them with consequences. Relationships, friendships, disappointments, responsibilities, and quiet nights have shown them patterns they once could not see. They are beginning to understand why they withdrew when emotions became intense. They are beginning to recognize how pride can disguise itself as independence. They are beginning to see how fear of being hurt can cause someone to create the very distance they later regret. These realizations did not happen all at once. They arrived slowly. But the secret conversation forced them to connect the pieces. And then they said your name differently. The person listening noticed this too. There was tenderness in it. There was regret. There was something almost like relief, as though speaking honestly allowed them to stop pretending for a moment. They shared a memory they had never told anyone. It was not necessarily the most dramatic moment between you. In fact, that is what makes it powerful. It was something small. A look. A conversation. The way you reacted when they expected judgment and received understanding instead. Perhaps you laughed together at exactly the wrong time. Perhaps you offered kindness when they were struggling. Perhaps you noticed they were tired before they said it. Whatever the exact moment was, your soulmate admitted that they returned to it repeatedly after you were gone from their daily life. Why? Because in that memory, they felt seen. And being seen is frightening to someone who has spent years surviving by remaining partially hidden. Do you understand now why this secret matters? They were not simply sharing information about you. They were revealing what you awakened in them. You became connected to a version of themselves they had not known how to protect, explain, or maintain. That is why they could remember you even while moving forward. They were not only remembering a person. They were remembering who they felt capable of becoming around that person. Yet there is another truth you must hear. Do not build your life around someone else's hidden feelings. Do not place your worth inside their courage or their hesitation. Your path is still your own. A divine message that strengthens you should never make you feel powerless, desperate, or dependent on another person's next move. Whatever your soulmate chooses to do with what they have realized, your peace must remain rooted within you. If they approach you, let their actions carry the weight their words claim. If they remain silent, let that silence provide its own information. You are not required to chase what is truly meant to meet you halfway. Still, something has changed. The conversation did not end where your soulmate expected. The person listening told them that keeping such a truth hidden was no longer neutral. Silence was now a decision. Your soulmate had believed they could simply wait until the feeling passed, until life became busy again, until enough time covered the old connection. But now someone else knew. Someone else had seen through the story. Someone else had watched their face change while speaking about you. And once a secret is spoken aloud, it becomes harder to push back into darkness. That night, your soulmate went home carrying the weight of their own confession. The room felt different because they were different. They picked up their phone more than once. They did not message you. Not yet. But they opened something connected to you. Perhaps an old conversation. A photograph. A saved note. A profile they had told themselves they no longer checked. Something that brought the past near enough to feel real again. And as they looked, there was a strange realization: you had changed too. Time had continued shaping you. Your energy, your life, the way you carried yourself, something was different. They were no longer looking at you only as someone from a memory. They were seeing the possibility that while they had been protecting themselves from the past, you had been becoming someone new. This unsettled them more than they expected. Because a hidden assumption had been living inside them. Some part of your soulmate believed that if they ever found the courage to return, you would still be emotionally standing where they left you. Not because they were arrogant, but because that is what memory does. Memory freezes people. It preserves them in the last emotional moment we understood. But suddenly, your soulmate realized they might not know you anymore. They realized you may have healed from things they still feel guilty about. You may have discovered strengths they never saw. You may no longer need explanations you once desperately wanted. And one question rose in them with painful clarity: what if I waited so long that they learned how to live without the answer I was afraid to give? That question stayed with them. And it led to another confession the next day. Yes, there was more. Your soulmate returned to the same person, either in another conversation or through a message, and admitted they had looked back. They tried to make it sound casual, but it was not. They said seeing you again, even from a distance, brought back something they had been avoiding. The person asked what exactly they felt. Your soulmate struggled to describe it. They said it was not simply missing you. It was the realization that a part of them had always expected another chapter, even though they had done nothing to create one. There it was. The hidden expectation. Somewhere deep inside, they had assumed life might eventually bring you together again without requiring courage from either of you. They had treated destiny like an excuse to avoid action. They thought if something was truly meant to happen, circumstances would arrange themselves perfectly. But life has been teaching them that meaningful things often require truth, humility, timing, and choice. A door can appear, but someone still has to open it. A connection can be significant, but people still have to communicate. Feelings can remain, but without action, they become memories rather than relationships. This realization humbled them. And then the person listening said something your soulmate was not prepared for. They asked, "What if this person thinks you never cared?" Your soulmate froze. Until that moment, they had been focused on their own fear that you might reject them, fear that you might be angry, fear that too much time had passed. But they had not fully considered your side of the silence. They had not imagined what their disappearance, distance, mixed signals, or restraint may have taught you to believe. Suddenly they began remembering moments from your perspective. Times when you may have waited for clarity. Times when you may have offered openness and received hesitation. Times when you may have wondered whether your intuition had betrayed you. Your soulmate realized that while they were protecting themselves, they may have unintentionally taught you that you were not important enough to fight for. That realization hurt. And this is where the truth finally began coming out. Not just to someone else, but to your soulmate themselves. They admitted, "I think I cared more than I knew how to handle." Those words changed the conversation. Because there is a difference between saying, "I cared," and saying, "I did not know how to handle how much I cared." The second reveals conflict. It reveals that distance can sometimes be the result of emotional overwhelm rather than emotional emptiness. Again, this does not erase responsibility. But it explains why certain actions never matched certain feelings. Your soulmate may have acted colder when they felt more. They may have pulled away precisely when closeness became undeniable. They may have created reasons to doubt the connection because accepting it would have required vulnerability. And now vulnerability is finding them anyway. The person listening told them that if they truly believed you had mattered, then they owed themselves honesty before anything else. Not a dramatic declaration. Not a promise about the future. Just honesty. Did they still care? Yes. Did they regret some choices? Yes. Were they afraid? Absolutely. Did they know what you would say if they reached out? No. And that final answer was the one they had been trying hardest to avoid. They do not know. That uncertainty is what makes this moment real. They cannot control your response. They cannot rewrite the past. They cannot guarantee that you still feel what you once felt. And for the first time, they are beginning to understand that courage does not come after certainty. Courage comes when there is no certainty. My child, something inside you may be reacting strongly to these words. Perhaps part of you wants a clear answer right now. Will they speak? Will they return? What exactly was said about you? What happens next? But your spirit is being asked to remain grounded. Let revelation strengthen you, not consume you. You are allowed to care without abandoning yourself. You are allowed to hope without turning hope into a prediction. You are allowed to recognize that someone may have hidden feelings while still requiring honesty, consistency, and respect if they come forward. There is one more layer to the secret, and this is the part your soulmate almost did not reveal. During the conversation, they admitted there was a specific reason they had been thinking about telling you the truth lately. Something recently happened that made time feel different to them. It was not necessarily a tragedy or anything frightening. It was a moment of perspective. They watched someone else take a chance. They saw a relationship change. They witnessed an opportunity disappear because someone waited too long. Perhaps they heard a story about two people who never said what needed to be said until circumstances changed forever. Whatever the catalyst was, it shook them enough to ask themselves, how long am I going to keep living as if I have unlimited time to be honest? That question stayed. And then came a decision. Your soulmate told the person who now knows the secret that they were thinking about doing something they had promised themselves they would never do. The listener asked what? Your soulmate did not answer immediately. They looked at their phone. They opened your name. Their finger hovered over the screen. Then they closed it. But before the conversation ended, they whispered something so quietly that the person beside them had to ask them to repeat it. Your soulmate said, there is something they still do not know about the day everything changed between us. And when they finally explained what happened on that day, the person listening stared at them in disbelief, because the truth was not what you were led to believe at all.